Victor Hernandez Cruz is a Puerto Rican poet. His poem "Business" is written in short free verse lines and is almost completely punctuation free. Instead of following a set pattern of stresses or rhymes, Cruz uses the more relaxed and varied rhythms of everyday conversation. By keeping his lines short, usually only 3 to 5 words, and the vocabulary simple and straightforward, Cruz succeeds in creating an easy tone. Almost every line lacks end punctuation, a technique called end jabbing the line, which follows the phrase to run over to the next line. The resulting effect is a flowing, non-stop motion throughout the work. Since this poem's subject matter questions authority, Cruz's refusal to incorporate proper punctuation in this poem and many of his other works reflects his questioning nature and a tendency to trust his own sense of voice over one determined by someone else. Let's see the summary of the poem. The opening line establishes that the following story was first told to the speaker by Don Arturo. This person might be a friend of the poet's or an authority figure in the neighborhood. In either case, by mentioning the source of the anecdote, Cruz emphasizes the influence of story and urban myth on his childhood. The story begins the way most stories do, introducing the central character, who seems like a simple man, perhaps a street vendor selling toys to kids in order to make a living. The very easy level of vocabulary is reminiscent of stories one is told as a child. Not only does he sell puppets and whistles, he is also a musician entertaining the crowds. Cruz gives a sense of how popular the man was. According to the story, he would draw huge crowds, an observation which helps establish how satisfied and appreciative the people were. We also learn more specifically how successful the man was, both in his sales of puppets and whistles and in his performances. Many street performers leave their guitar or saxophone cases open while they play so people can toss in money, usually small change for tips. Again, this was probably the man's only source of income, and the poet does not give any indication that the man was disturbing or bothering anyone in any way. Contrasting the man's popularity and success at making a living, the speaker bluntly announces that what he was doing was against the local law, which probably required that he possess a vendor's license of some kind. Perhaps an exaggeration which stories are prone to, the lines seem to show the humorous side of the situation. They also show the stubborn persistence of the police in arresting him and the man's stubborn persistence to keep doing what he does best, regardless of laws. The man's court date arrived. The man shows no regard for courtroom protocol, instead, putting on his performance, a puppet show, and making a circus out of the proceedings. The surprising and extreme behavior of the detectives and court clerks indicates that they are as impressed with the man's show as other crowds have been. As if rolling with laughter were not enough, the detectives and court clerks want to buy the man's goods after he is finished. Again, the reader is left wondering how much of the story is exaggerated. But in any case, the poet sets up a very unexpected courtroom scene, perhaps secularizing or mocking the stiff and highly organized proceedings most courtrooms observe. In juxtaposition to the out of control proceedings in the court, everyone having fun, the judge is not happy, perhaps pounding his gavel over the laughter, demanding order, asking the man, "What kind of business is this?" This is the first time in the poem that the reader hears the man speak and learns his side of the story. Monkey Man was perhaps slang for any street performer, referring to the technique some entertainers would use of training a spider monkey to take tips and small change from the crowd after each show. Or perhaps the man was known around the neighborhood as the Monkey Man. In this courtroom farce, he gets the last word, turning his wit back on the angry judge. Of course, monkey business is also a phrase that refers to any kind of playful misbehavior and is perhaps the man's way of pointing out to the judge how harmless the performances really are, and further, how unreasonable it is to be arrested for making people happy and trying to earn a living. Human beings often behave in ways that their job or circumstances require, and this behavior frequently conflicts with who they believe themselves to really be. Such conflicts are not uncommon in society that has put the needs of big business and government ahead of those individuals. Cruz uses a confrontation between a street performer and the government to point out the hypocrisy at the root of these conflicts. He suggests that behind all of the masquerading and posing that goes on during the course of one's work are human beings that can laugh, love, and recognize the difference between what is legal and what is right. Cruz spells this out most vividly in the responses of the court clerks and the detectives to the Monkey Man's courtroom puppet show. Their ability to enjoy themselves stands in stark contrast to the judge's inability to enjoy himself and his steadfast insistence on following the law, even if doing so proves to be sillier than the Monkey Man's performance itself.